But you might say something like this. Wait a second. Didn't George Orwell teach us not to use foreign words when a domestic word or a local word or a word, an English word will do? Yeah, he did teach that. But remember, he didn't say that you never use a foreign word. He said when a local word will do. So my point here is a bit of a pedagogical and a semantic concern with meaning, pedagogical concern with teaching, sort of a double concern. What I want to do is by staying with the word Hosea as instead of piety, it's to force you to realize that we're looking at a text that is removed from us, written by a writer that's a long, long time ago, so over 2,000 years ago, and a speaker, namely Socrates, who himself didn't write anything. So this use of the ancient Greek word when I discuss things is to just try to force you from crowding all your modern conceptions in and perhaps bringing too much to the text. So the takeaway, the lesson here, you can think of it is when you're approaching a text from another time, another culture, something that's trying to, shall we say, metaphorically, speak to us across the centuries, try and let, shall we say, the text speak as much to you as you can. We all bring things to books and we all bring things to articles or whatever that are our own views, maybe even our own prejudices or whatever. But if the text itself has views and prejudices, you want to let those speak. You'll come to a better understanding. So we want the context of the text, and by using this Hosea to sort of force us to hold back on our preconceived notions. So it's a hermeneutic, an interpretive device that I'm using pedagogically and semantically to help to keep everyone from bringing too much to the Euthyphro and trying to let the Euthyphro speak to us. Now, not only, just as a little note, which I find fascinating, is that as I mentioned, that this little mark above the Omicron, this little curved guy, which kind of looks like partly a quotation mark. As I said, it's a rough breathing mark, but the accent here is not simply stress; it's a pitch accent. In other words, if Aristotle and Plato were around when they would say Hosean, they wouldn't pronounce it just like Hosean. They would raise the pitch of the whole, so it would start low and it would go up. Right? I'm not even going to try that because I'm not a native speaker of a tonal language, a pitched language, right? But the ancient Greeks did speak it, so it's not just simply an emphasis; it's a change in pitch. So English isn't a tonal language. I don't speak it. I don't speak a tonal language, but one tonal language, for instance, is Mandarin. So I've heard from some classicists that professional teachers of Greek, they say that students who speak languages like Mandarin that are tonal languages, they can handle all the pitch changes and do it naturally. So if you just Google, learning Mandarin 101, and one of the first things you'll have to learn are all the different pitch changes. And there's, I think, about 4 or 5 of them that you have to get comfortable with, raising and lowering pitches, which is why to my ear, when I hear Mandarin, I don't understand it in terms of its semantic content, but I hear the pitch changes. And so it sounds kind of musical to me, right? Because music is the idea of varying pitches. And so it's quite interesting. In English, we do vary a pitch a little bit. Think about a sentence like, it is raining. If I say, it is raining, and then I say, it is raining, well, that little kind of change in pitch in the second way of saying it does identify some kind of difference between it and it is raining. So it is raining is a statement, and it is raining would be a question. So a pitch change in English, they're still around a little bit. We do use them, but they're not really used for changes in meaning, because raining, even though the pitch was raised in the sentence, it still means the same thing as raining without the pitch change. So pitch changes play a role in modern English. Somebody who's really good at pitch changing is a more exciting speaker, because if you spoke without any pitch changes, it would be, very monotone, right? So we'd say, oh, that's kind of not a good way to deliver a speech. But it doesn't really necessarily change the cognitive meaning, although it can have an emotional impact. In any case, there's a little bit of the history of some ancient Greek the ancient Greek language. Now, what I want to look at here is this notion of religions. Okay, so I mentioned we're looking at religion. There's a distinction that I want to look at that's quite important with the notion of religion, and scholars in religious studies do this. Now, religious studies is not the same as theology. Theology is the study of God's relation to the world, and it's often regarded as a confessional type of domain, which means there's an element of belief. So you're not really doing theology if you deny the existence of God. So atheists don't really do theology, but atheists and religious believers as well can do religious studies. So it's the study of religion as a social phenomenon. Right? So religious studies department is really different than, let's say, a theology faculty. They're not quite the same. It's a different attitude or direction overall. But I want to look at the distinction between evolutionary religions and revealed religions. So you have the notion of evolutionary versus revealed. Okay, so evolutionary religions versus revealed religions. Okay, that's an important distinction for us to understand so that we can get a better idea of what's going on in the Euthyphro, at least once again of its context. So evolutionary religions, they tend to be the way religion as a social phenomenon actually started. So evolutionary religions, think of them as like early religions, and some of them are still around though, don't kid yourself, but they tend to lack a temporal origin. Right? So like you can't say who started the Greek religion of like Zeus and these guys. Who founded it? Can't ask that. Well, you can ask that question, but you're not going to get an answer. There's no founder of paganism, right? All this stuff just kind of grew, as they say, out of the mists of time, right? The mists of history, or whatever metaphor you like, because there is no single founder of an evolutionary religion. It just grows out of a society's context. And it's usually the byproduct of human interactions with nature and people's attempts to understand what's going on. Now, there's lots of theories of how history evolves. You know, humans start with myths and religion, and then as they do X, Y, and Z, they move from that to philosophy, and then that branches out into different directions and becomes physics and mathematics, etc., etc. But the general idea is that in an evolutionary religion like paganism, it just emerges. There's no single kind of a source or founder. There's no founder of the Greek religion or paganism, things like that. There's no pure founder of something like Hinduism. There's some primary texts, but there's not really a founder in the same way as there are with revealed religions like Islam, Christianity, and even Judaism. So these are all, the evolutionary religions tend to be polytheistic, not necessarily anthropomorphic though. It could be gods that are very different than humans, but there tend to be many gods, right? Because there's many interactions, and so there's some story to be told by many different gods. They don't tend to have, evolutionary religions don't tend to have sacred books. I mentioned the ancient Greeks and their religion. They talked about Homer and Hesiod, but Hesiod wouldn't really have been like a Bible. Like, you wouldn't have been swearing on Hesiod in a court or anything like that. It wasn't quite viewed as a sacred text. But evolutionary religions can have sacred texts, but in general they don't. But sometimes they can. And pretty well all the ancient religions were evolutionary, except for Judaism and Christianity. If you put them, they're the ones that are revealed religions. So the Romans, they had sort of an evolutionary religion. That's why one of the reasons why the Romans were like really puzzled by Christianity, because it was a new kind of religion, not just a new religion, but a new kind. Like, religions came into Roman society from around, but this one sort of emerged out, like it appeared. And so the Romans were like, you don't invent a religion. Think about religions that have been constructed in the 20th century, like something like Scientology, for instance, right? It has a founder, And that's why a lot of people thought this was odd, right? You don't found religions. They're just there. So that's what puzzled the Romans about Christianity. So Christianity, Judaism with Abraham, and Islam is also founded. Christianity is founded. These ones tend to have sacred texts. They're more doctrinal. They tend to be much more concerned with conceptual elements, like what do you actually believe. Evolutionary ones tend to be more of practice. Not surprising when you think in antiquity, you were really more concerned with practices and getting the gods maybe through certain rituals to help you here, rather than questions particularly of belief and the afterlife. However, the afterlife did play an important role in the thought of ancient Greece. So the ancient Greeks had all kinds of practices and rituals. But as I said, they did worry a little bit about the afterlife. I'm going to touch on that in the next video.